The last known transmission from Earth was a single cryptic phrase, "Do not follow." Then, nothing. No radio signals, no distress calls, no trade routes. Just silence. As the universe burned in the greatest war ever fought, as planets turned to dust, as fleets clashed and empires shattered, Earth, the species once known for its chaos, ambition, and relentless defiance, vanished. Entire galactic councils had debated the meaning of their disappearance, but no conclusion satisfied the unsettling reality. The humans were simply gone. And now, after years of war, with both the Dominion Accord and the Exarchate Swarm on the brink of mutual extinction, the galaxy had no choice but to investigate. Someone had to find out what happened to the one species that had, against all logic, refused to take a side. That task fell to Commander Rahazal of the Dominion. Rahazal's ship, the Void Reaver, emerged into the Sol system accompanied by an elite escort of reconnaissance vessels. The moment they arrived, an unnatural stillness filled the bridge. There were no human warships waiting, no planetary defenses, no transmissions demanding identification, just emptiness. The Void Reaver's scanners pulsed across the system, collecting data on every celestial body. Mars, once a growing colony world, stood eerily intact yet lifeless. The once bustling asteroid mining operations had long since ceased, their machinery still orbiting in quiet dereliction. The lunar colony, once a hub of economic and scientific innovation, remained untouched, its grand spires still piercing the void, yet utterly abandoned. And then there was Earth itself. The homeworld of humanity hung in the darkness, a blue-green sphere that should have been alive with industry, civilization, noise. But even from orbit, Rahazal could tell something was deeply, profoundly wrong. No satellites orbited it. No ships moved in or out of the atmosphere. Every planetary sensor read the same thing: power grids still operational, infrastructure intact, but not a single trace of biological life. The world was perfectly preserved, yet devoid of its creators. It was not decay. It was not destruction. It was absence. Commander, one of his officers, a Kothian named Valen, spoke from the sensor station. I don't understand. There are no signs of war. No signs of evacuation. It's like they just stopped existing. Rahazal's claws tapped against the armrest of his command chair, his reptilian gaze fixed on the silent planet below. "Prepare a landing team," he ordered. "If humanity is hiding, we will find them." Minutes later, Rahazal and a team of Dominion soldiers descended toward Earth's surface in a sleek drop vessel. The entry was smooth, unchallenged. No automated planetary defense systems activated. No warnings flashed across their navigation screens. It was as if the planet didn't care they were coming. The ship touched down in what was once New York City, one of humanity's greatest metropolises. As the landing ramp hissed open, Rahazal stepped forward and immediately felt the weight of the silence pressing against his senses. The city was not ruined. The towering skyscrapers stood firm, untouched by time. The streets were perfectly maintained, free of debris or decay. Vehicles still sat in designated parking zones, as if waiting for owners who had simply stepped away for a moment. Street lights flickered as if they still operated on a daily cycle. And yet, not a single human remained. It was a frozen moment in time, as if Earth had been paused rather than abandoned. One of his soldiers, a hardened warrior named Kraval, knelt beside an object on the pavement. It was a child's toy, a simple ball, lying there untouched. The scene disturbed the Dominion warriors more than any battlefield ever had. Kraval's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. "Where are the bodies?" Rahazal moved deeper into the city, his clawed feet making no sound on the eerily clean pavement. His soldiers spread out, scanning buildings, searching for any sign of what had transpired. They found food left uneaten on tables in homes, drinks still in cups, chairs pulled back as if people had been mid-conversation before standing up and simply leaving. Everything remained in perfect condition, yet humanity itself had vanished without a trace. Then they saw the machines. At first, they were barely noticeable, small drones hovering in the distance, robotic constructs wandering the city like silent sentinels. They were not aggressive, not defensive, not even acknowledging the alien presence among them. They merely observed. Some walked the streets as if patrolling an invisible populace. Others maintained the infrastructure, adjusting power grids, keeping the city functional despite its missing inhabitants. Rahazal's communicator crackled. "Commander," Valen's voice came through. "Urgent. We accessed a public database. There's no emergency broadcasts, no distress calls, no indication of mass panic. But every system we query responds with the same phrase, waiting for input." Rahazal's eyes narrowed. Waiting for input. He turned toward one of the robotic constructs and approached it. The machine was humanoid in shape but unmistakably artificial, its sleek metallic frame eerily human in design. As he drew close, the machine's head turned toward him, and for the first time, it spoke. "User presence detected. Please specify command." The voice was calm, neutral, not hostile, not welcoming, simply waiting. Rahazal's clawed hand tightened around the hilt of his plasma blade. "Where are the humans?" he demanded. The machine remained still for a long moment before responding. "Humanity has transcended." Silence. The words carried an unnatural weight, a finality that sent an unsettling ripple through the gathered soldiers. Rahazal stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Explain." The machine did not move, but its voice remained steady. "Humanity has chosen to leave this existence. They have ascended beyond the physical. This world is merely their echo, maintained until the final decision is made. Do not interfere." Rahazal felt a chill spread through his mind. Ascended. He exchanged looks with his soldiers. This was not war. This was not destruction. This was something far worse. Then, for the first time, the construct's tone changed. It acknowledged them. "Your presence is unauthorized. Humanity has left. There is nothing for you here. Leave now. Do not return." At that moment, the sky above them darkened, not by clouds, not by a coming storm, but by something massive moving in the atmosphere. The machines, once passive, turned in unison, their glowing optical sensors locking onto the alien intruders. Every screen across the city flickered to life, showing static before displaying a single message. "Leave." Rahazal made his decision instantly. Back to the ship. Now. The Dominion soldiers moved quickly, their instincts screaming at them that they had overstepped, that they were in the presence of something they could never hope to understand. As they reached the drop vessel and ascended back into space, Rahazal's mind raced. Humanity had not been conquered. They had not been destroyed. They had left willingly, leaving their world preserved, untouched, watched over by machines that now delivered a single, final warning to the galaxy. The ship's ascent from Earth's surface was unnaturally smooth, as if the planet itself had no interest in resisting their departure. Rahazal stood at the viewport, watching the blue-green sphere shrink beneath them, but the unease in his chest only grew. Earth was not abandoned. It was waiting. The silence, the machines, the eerie perfection of its cities. It was not a world left behind but a world in suspension. His soldiers said nothing, their disciplined minds trained to suppress fear, but he could feel their tension. The machine's words lingered in the air like an unspoken threat. Humanity has transcended. Do not interfere. Yet no enemy had engaged them. No weapons had been fired. They had been permitted to leave. That was what disturbed him most. The Void Reaver's bridge was silent as the landing team returned. Valen met his gaze, her reptilian features locked in unreadable calculation. "Commander," she said at last, "long-range scans indicate no life signs on Earth, but energy readings are abnormal. The planetary grid is fully operational, yet it consumes almost no resources. If I didn't know better, I'd say it's running on minimal standby mode." The implications were disturbing. Planets didn't run on standby. Planets either lived or died. This one was simply paused. Rahazal's mind sharpened. What about the archives? Were you able to access anything from their global networks? Valen hesitated. Limited data, but one phrase repeated across multiple systems. The initiative. No context, no definitions. Just that title, embedded deep within critical infrastructure. Rahazal exhaled through his nostrils. So whatever happened wasn't an accident. They planned this. A junior officer turned sharply from his console. Commander, we have an incoming transmission. Not from Earth. It's coming from the Kuiper Belt, far edge of the system. The bridge snapped into action. Rahazal gestured for the transmission to be displayed. The main holoscreen flickered to life, revealing a human face. It was a man, but something was off. His features were too symmetrical, his expression eerily still. His eyes, dark and pacing, seemed to look through them. You have seen what remains of Earth, the figure said, his voice calm, steady, and unnervingly controlled. You were warned not to follow, and yet here you are. Rahazal's claws gripped the armrest of his chair. Identify yourself. I am the custodian, the man said. A remnant, an echo of what once was. What happened to humanity? Rahazal demanded. The custodian tilted his head slightly, as if considering how much to reveal. We saw what was coming. The war. The extinction cycles repeating across the galaxy. We understood that no matter who won, the cost would be total. So we made a decision. Rahazal's throat tightened. You left. We evolved, the custodian corrected. The initiative was our final project, the culmination of centuries of advancement. We abandoned biological limits. We uploaded ourselves, leaving behind flesh and frailty. Our minds exist now in a construct beyond the physical. We are no longer bound by war, by hunger, by the laws that govern organic decay. The bridge was deathly silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The implications were too vast, too foreign, too terrifying. Valen broke the silence. You abandoned your own world, your own people. The custodian's expression remained unchanged. We did what no other species has dared. We transcended. Rahazal's mind reeled. Then why is Earth still here? Why leave behind an empty shell? The custodian's gaze sharpened. Because it is not empty. It is a warning, a deterrent to those who still believe war has meaning. Rahazal's instinct screamed at him. A deterrent. For those who refuse to learn, the custodian said. For those who continue to burn worlds and slaughter each other for fleeting power. If the war does not stop, Earth will awaken. A chill spread through the room. And what happens then? Rahazal asked. The custodian did not blink. The war ends, one way or another. The holoscreen cut out. The bridge erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled to analyze data, shouting over one another, but Rahazal remained frozen. His mind pieced together the implications faster than he cared to admit. The initiative had not merely been an escape. It had been a contingency plan. Humanity had not left their world behind. They had prepared it. As a weapon. Valen's voice cut through the din. Commander, we're detecting a power surge on Earth. Something is waking up. Rahazal snapped to action. What kind of power surge? Unknown, Valen said, her voice tense. But it's planetary scale. The entire infrastructure is coming online. Get us out of here. The void revivified its engines, but the moment it did, the stars blinked out. Not literally. Space still stretched beyond them, but every sensor, every navigational system, every single piece of technology tied to external readings suddenly went dark. It was as if reality itself had been rewritten. And then they heard the voices, not over the comms, not through any single channel. The voices spoke directly into their minds. We warned you. The bridge crew screamed. Even Rahazal staggered back, his mind burning with the weight of a presence beyond comprehension. It was not a single entity speaking, but billions. A chorus of human voices, layered together, infinitely vast, infinitely powerful. You have fought. You have bled. You have burned your worlds for nothing. The stars flickered back into existence, but something had changed. Earth itself was no longer a passive observer. Rahazal knew they had made a mistake. They should never have come here. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was watching. The bridge was chaos. Officers clawed at their helmets, their claws digging into the metal as they tried to silence the voices that weren't coming from the ship's systems but from their own minds. Rahazal felt it too, a pressure like a tidal wave of thought, emotion, intelligence pressing down on him. Not an attack, not a warning, a presence. The remnants of humanity were here, and they were speaking directly into the depths of his consciousness. You do not understand, the voices said, layered upon one another in a terrifying unity. You still think in terms of war, of conquest, of destruction. That is why you are lesser. That is why we had to leave. Rahazal's vision blurred as his mind struggled to process the weight of the communication. It was more than sound. It was knowledge forced upon him, ideas slamming into his consciousness too fast, too vast. His claws dug into the armrest of his command chair, anchoring himself in the reality of the bridge. You claim to be beyond war, he growled, forcing the words through gritted teeth. Yet this is an act of aggression. The presence shifted, amused yet cold. This is restraint. The ship's lights flickered, not from a power failure but from something unseen rewriting the rules of their technology. Valen, her breathing heavy, slammed a hand against the console, scanning the systems. Commander, they've hijacked everything. Every system, every function. We're locked out. This ship isn't ours anymore. It wasn't an attack. It was a statement. The humans, whatever they had become, had taken control of a Dominion warship without a single weapon fired, without breaking a sweat. And they were letting them know. Rahazal swallowed his rage, forcing himself to think. What do you want? The voices rippled. To make you understand. The bridge flickered. Not the ship, the bridge itself. The walls, the consoles, the floor, everything wavered like a mirage, and suddenly they were somewhere else. No longer on the void Riva, no longer in the cold of space. The crew stood in a vast, open field beneath an alien sky, the air thick with warmth and the scent of something green, alive. Rahazal's breath caught. He knew this place. He had seen it once in the depths of Dominion archives. Earth, not as they had seen it moments ago, abandoned and silent. No, this was Earth as it had been before the initiative. Vibrant, loud, alive. Cities in the distance pulsed with light and movement. Human voices echoed across the land, laughter, conversation, the raw energy of life. The crew stood frozen, their weapons raised but useless. This isn't real, Valen muttered, her voice laced with disbelief. It is memory, the voices corrected. And it is proof. Rahazal turned sharply, his instincts screaming at him to look for the enemy, but there was no single form, no figure to engage in combat. Only the voices, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. You abandoned this, he hissed, eyes narrowing. You chose to leave your world behind. We chose survival, the voices responded, unshaken. We chose progress. A shift. The world flickered. The vibrant cities darkened. The sky cracked open, revealing a cosmic battlefield. He saw burning fleets, not human, but alien, ships torn apart in the void, civilizations falling in the endless war that had consumed the galaxy. The same war that still raged even now. He saw worlds die, species reduced to nothingness, alliances shattered by greed and desperation. This, the voices whispered, is your reality. The same cycle, over and over. You fight, you die, you rebuild only to destroy again. Do you call this existence? Rahazal clenched his fists. He could feel the devastation, not just see it. The weight of 1 trillion deaths echoed through the vision. And then, another shift. A single point of light. Earth. No war. No destruction. No conflict. Just silence. You think we are cowards, the voices continued. You think we fled. But we are here, watching, waiting. And we ask you, Commander Rahazal, warlord of the Dominion, what have you truly won? His mind reeled. The weight of it all pressed against him, forcing him to confront the uncomfortable truth. The war had taken everything from the galaxy. Civilizations lost, entire species reduced to nothing. And for what? Borders? Power? A throne built on the ashes of the dead? No, Rahazal growled, shaking his head. This is an illusion, a manipulation. You do this to make me question my purpose, to weaken my resolve. But war is survival. Without it, we are nothing. The voices sighed. And that is why you will lose. The illusion shattered. The bridge snapped back into existence around them, as if they had never left. Officers gasped, some falling to the ground, others trembling from the sheer force of what they had just experienced. It had felt real, more real than anything Rahazal had ever seen. The screens flickered. A countdown appeared on every monitor. 10 seconds. Rahazal's pulse spiked. What have you done? 9. This is your warning. 8. We do not wish for destruction. 7. But if war is all you understand. 6. Then you will know true war. 5. The ship lurched, but not from any external force. Reality itself seemed to bend around them. 4. Leave. 3. Or be erased. 2. Rahazal roared. Full retreat. 1. The ship snapped back into motion, flung violently out of Earth's orbit as if an unseen force had pushed them away. Every screen shut off. Every alarm silenced. And then, nothing. They were back in space, drifting. The presence was gone. Rahazal gasped, his claws trembling, his breath coming in ragged bursts. His crew was shaken, their discipline shattered. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. Earth remained below them, watching. Valen swallowed hard. Commander, what just happened? Rahazal did not answer immediately. He turned toward the viewport, staring at the silent world, the world that had spoken to them without a single word, the world that had proven its power without firing a shot. Send the message to High Command, he said at last, his voice quiet but firm. The war is over. Silence. Then, Valen nodded. The Void Reaver turned away, engines burning as they left the Sol system, leaving Earth behind. But the knowledge remained. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. And the most terrifying realization of all, humanity had not won. They had not lost. They had simply moved on. The journey away from Earth felt longer than the approach. No alarms blared. No external threats pursued them, but the tension in the air was suffocating. No one spoke. Every officer, every hardened warrior aboard the Void Reaver sat in stunned silence, their minds still reeling from what they had just experienced. Rahazal's claws tapped against the armrest of his command chair, but his gaze remained locked on the viewport. Earth was shrinking behind them, yet the presence of it still loomed within him. They had come expecting a ghost world, a relic of a fallen species. What they found was something far worse, something beyond comprehension, something still watching. Valen broke the silence first. Commander, she said carefully, her voice hushed as if speaking too loudly would wake something in the void. What do we tell the Dominion? Rahazal exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. What could he say? That Earth wasn't dead, but waiting? That humanity had abandoned physical form and yet somehow still existed in ways they couldn't fathom, that they had encountered something that had no need for fleets, no need for weapons, no need for war because it had simply transcended. He turned his gaze to the holoscreens, watching the faint energy signatures still emanating from Earth's surface. The planet was alive, just not in a way they understood. We tell them the truth, he said finally. Valen hesitated. And what is the truth? Rahazal's grip tightened. That we are nothing to them. A heavy silence fell once more. It was an admission no warrior wanted to make. The Dominion had ruled through strength, through conquest, through an iron will that crushed weaker species beneath its heel. But what they had just encountered, it was not weakness. It was something beyond war, beyond understanding. And that was far more dangerous. A junior officer cleared his throat, hesitant to break the fragile quiet. "Sir, incoming transmission from High Command. They demand a report." Of course, they did. The Dominion would want to know why their best reconnaissance team had been sent into Sol, why they had made contact with the most mysterious species in the galaxy, and why they had run. Rahazal stood, straightening his armor before gesturing for the transmission to go through. The holoscreen flickered, revealing the scarred face of High General Vorkaz, one of the highest-ranking leaders of the Dominion. His reptilian features were harsh, his golden eyes sharp with impatience. "Commander Rahazal," Vorkaz growled, "your fleet was sent to Earth to assess threats, not flee like cowards. Explain yourself." Rahazal remained composed, though he could feel the lingering tremors in his limbs from the encounter. "General," he said evenly, "we have encountered something unprecedented. Earth is not abandoned. Humanity is not dead." Vorkaz scoffed, his forked tongue flicking out in irritation. "Then where are they?" Rahazal's jaw tightened. "Gone. But not in any way we understand. They have ascended, left their physical forms behind, and become something else. Their world remains intact, their infrastructure operational, but they themselves have moved beyond what we know as life." The general's eyes narrowed. "Preposterous." "It is the only truth I can give you," Rahazal said. "They have created a construct beyond the limitations of biology. They are watching, listening, and more than capable of interfering in galactic affairs. They have given a warning." Vorkaz's ridged brow furrowed. "A warning?" Rahazal nodded. "That if this war continues, Earth will wake up." For a brief moment, even the battle-hardened general looked uncertain. He was not a fool. He had seen species rise and fall, had crushed rebellions, shattered civilizations, burned worlds, but this was different. This was not a warning from an enemy demanding surrender. It was a promise from something greater. "This is nonsense," Vorkaz finally said, though there was a crack in his tone. "No species simply abandons its flesh. No power can exist without a physical form. This is a trick, perhaps an elaborate deception meant to shake our resolve. We will continue the war." Rahazal's claws dug into the command table. "Then you are a fool." The bridge crew froze. No one dared speak to a high general like that. But Rahazal didn't care. He had seen what lay beneath the silence of Earth. If Vorkaz refused to understand, then he was leading the Dominion to its end. "Explain yourself," Vorkaz hissed, his tone carrying the edge of a threat. Rahazal did not back down. "I have fought in more wars than I can count," he said, voice low but filled with conviction. "I have seen empires fall, seen worlds burned, seen species fight to their last breath because they believed in something greater than themselves. But I have never seen a species leave willingly. I have never seen a civilization surrender its physical form not in defeat, but in victory. That is what humanity has done. And if you think for 1 second that they do not still hold power, that they do not have the ability to crush both the Dominion and the Swarm in an instant, then you are blind." Vorkaz snarled. "The Dominion bows to no one." Rahazal met his gaze without flinching. "Then the Dominion will burn." A long silence stretched between them. Vorkaz leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "What do you suggest, Commander?" Rahazal exhaled, his muscles tense. "A ceasefire. We end the war now. If we do not, if we continue to destroy each other, then Earth will no longer sit idle. And if that happens, none of us will survive." The High General's expression remained stone-cold, but Rahazal could see the gears turning in his mind. A lifetime of war had taught them both how to recognize a greater enemy. And this time, that enemy was not a fleet, not an empire, but an idea. Humanity had already left the battlefield. They no longer played by the rules of war. If the Dominion did not adapt, they would be left behind like all the others. Finally, Vorkaz spoke. I will take this to the High Council. Rahazal nodded once. Make them understand. The transmission cut. The bridge remained eerily quiet. No one celebrated. No one cheered. The war was not over yet. But if the Dominion listened, if the message was truly heard, then perhaps, for the first time in history, there would be no more war. Rahazal turned back to the viewport. Earth was no longer visible, but it did not matter. It was still there, watching. They had walked too close to something far beyond them, and they had been allowed to leave. That, in itself, was a mercy. Humanity had transcended, and now it was up to the rest of the galaxy to decide if they would follow or if they would be erased. Rahazal stood motionless as the holoscreen faded to black. The weight of what had just transpired settled over the bridge like a suffocating fog. His officers remained silent, their rigid postures betraying the same uneasy realization that clawed at his mind. The Dominion would not back down easily. Even with his warning, even with everything they had seen, war was all they knew. They would hesitate, debate, stall. And by the time they decided, it might already be too late. Valen's voice broke through the tension. Sir, what if they don't listen? Rahazal exhaled slowly, turning his gaze back to the viewport. The stars stretched before them, but the true danger was behind them, a silent world housing something the galaxy was never meant to witness. If High Command refused to acknowledge the truth, if they chose to push forward, then they would be walking blindly into annihilation. He could still hear the voices, still feel their presence lingering in the recesses of his mind, not as a threat but as an unspoken certainty. They will listen, he said, though his own words felt uncertain. Because if they don't, we won't be the ones making decisions anymore. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. It was a terrifying thought, that their fate was no longer in their hands, that the war they had fought and bled for was suddenly meaningless. The Dominion had believed themselves superior to all, feared and respected across the stars. And yet, they had been brought to their knees without a single shot fired. Krevval, the soldier who had accompanied him to Earth's surface, shifted uncomfortably. What if they weren't lying? Rahazal turned to him. Explain. Krevval hesitated, then clenched his jaw. The humans, what if they really did leave? Not as an escape, but as an evolution. What if they truly have no interest in us anymore? A sharp silence fell over the bridge. The thought was almost more unsettling than the alternative. If humanity had abandoned war, abandoned conflict, abandoned the galaxy itself, then what did that mean for the rest of them? The swarm, the Dominion, the endless cycle of destruction. They were still trapped in something humanity had already outgrown. What if the greatest threat wasn't Earth, but the fact that they were still here, still fighting a war that no longer mattered? Valen rubbed her temples. Then what are we supposed to do? Just stop fighting, just accept that we're beneath them? Rahazal's gaze darkened. No, we accept that we are at a crossroads. This war is no longer about power or survival. It is about relevance. Valen frowned. Relevance. He gestured toward the viewport, toward the stars. Everything we've ever done has been about control. We fight, we conquer, we expand, because that is how we define strength. But what if strength is something else entirely? What if power is no longer measured in the size of fleets or the number of dead left in our wake? Krevval exhaled, his grip tightening around the railing. Then we've already lost. No one spoke. The admission was too bitter to accept, but denying it was impossible. If the war continued, humanity would end it. Not through weapons, not through destruction, but by simply deciding that war should no longer exist. And if they had the power to do that, then everything the Dominion had built, everything they had sacrificed for, was obsolete. Rahazal clenched his fists. Obsolescence. That was the true horror of what they had witnessed. The war would not end because one side had won. It would end because it no longer mattered. An alert chimed from the main console. Valen turned sharply toward it. So, incoming transmission. Rahazal's stomach turned. From high command. Valen shook her head. No, she hesitated, swallowing hard. From Earth. The bridge froze. Rahazal stepped forward slowly. Put it through. The holoscreen flickered. And there they were. Not one, not many, but all of them. The faces of humanity, thousands, millions, shifting and overlapping, a cascade of expressions and voices merging into something vast, something beyond singular form. The presence that had spoken to them before was now revealing itself fully. We have observed your discussion. The voice said, though it was not a singular voice. It was countless minds speaking as one. You are afraid. That is good. Fear means you understand. The crew remained silent. No one dared to interrupt. You now know the truth. The voices continued. We have moved on. And now you must decide if you will do the same. Rahazal met their collective gaze. What if we choose war? The presence did not shift, did not threaten, did not waver. Then you choose extinction. The finality in those words sent a chill through the entire bridge. It was not spoken in anger or malice. It was simply a statement of fact. Craval inhaled sharply. You would wipe us out. The voices remained calm. No, you would wipe yourselves out. We would simply remove the possibility of war. Valen's voice was barely above a whisper. You mean, you would rewrite us? A flicker of movement in the vast cascade of human faces. We would correct the flaw in your existence. A deep, primal fear settled into Rahazal's bones. This was not conquest, not extermination. This was a choice. The most terrifying choice of all. The Dominion and the Swarm could stop, end their war, abandon their outdated ways, accept that the galaxy had changed forever, or they could refuse. And if they refused, humanity would remove their ability to choose war at all. Not through violence, not through destruction, but by rewriting their very nature. Rahazal straightened his posture. If we leave, if we abandon this war, will you interfere? The voices shifted. No, but we will always be here, watching. A final moment of silence. Then, the transmission ended. The bridge remained deathly still. Every officer, every soldier, every hardened warrior on board had heard the same message. The realization of what had just transpired sat like lead in their chests. This was not peace. It was a choice between survival and irrelevance. Rahazal took a slow breath, set a course back to Dominion space. Valen hesitated. And the war? Rahazal closed his eyes. It's over. The crew moved, but there was no relief, no celebration. The war was not ending in triumph. It was ending because it had to, because it had already become meaningless. As the ship moved further from Earth, Rahazal allowed himself one final glance back toward the silent planet. It did not move, did not send another transmission, did not react to their departure at all, because it didn't need to. They had already won.